Presentation of dialogue on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore family's legacy of building the great state of Idaho.
Two-thirds of Americans say religion is losing its influence on American life. If preaching from the pulpit no longer changes people's minds, then what does? We're talking about religion in American society. Join the conversation. Dialogue is next. Hello, I'm Joan Cartan-Hansen. Thank you for joining us here on Idaho Public Television, on the World Wide Web, and on public radio stations. Religion has always been at center stage in American life, even before there was an America. Puritans came to the New World to escape religious oppression. Other faiths soon followed, creating a rich mixture of religious traditions stretching the length of the colonies. Religious liberty became an American value, but America herself was founded without a religious center. The First Amendment guarantees no laws will be passed favoring one religion over another. Yet religion was central to the American experience. Religious leaders in the 1800s and 1900s pushed through major political policies like child labor laws, prison reform, and women's right to vote. Many Americans today contend their religious beliefs continue to influence their views on social issues like abortion and same-sex marriage. But a Pew Forum on Religion and Public Life survey indicates religion is losing its influence on many other areas of public policy. On immigration, 1 in 4 churchgoers say the clergy has spoken out about this issue, but only 7% of those adults say religion has shaped their views. On the environment, only 6% of adults say religion influences their opinion, despite nearly half of the clergy speaking out on the subject. And 88% of churchgoers say they hear about the issue of hunger and poverty, but only 10% cite religion as the reason why they support or oppose government assistance for the poor. So if 67% of Americans believe religion is losing its influence on American life, what does that mean for the public policy, for religion, and for American society as a whole? Joining me tonight to discuss these questions, joining us first in our Pocatello studio is Ron Scott, an instructor of political science at the Political Science Department at Idaho State University. And joining us here in our Boise studio is Brent Peterson, associate professor of theology at Northwest Nazarene University. Gentlemen, thank you. I appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks,
and Ron,
Joan.
I appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, Joan, for inviting me.
You bet. And of course, we want to hear from you. Give us a call, toll free, 1-800-973-9800. So if the Pew Center is correct, if religion is declining and pretty dramatically in its influence, why?
Lots of reasons, possibly. One of them could be that persons are just compartmentalizing their faith. My religious faith connects to my personal, individual, quiet life, but perhaps my religious background doesn't give me a vision for the social contract. And so I have a very narrow sense in which my faith is impacting my views on immigration, healthcare, or whatever.
And Ron, what do you think?
I think too, Brent, that given the overall economy, the overall position that we find ourselves in as a nation, that many individuals are looking for instruction. They're looking for the concept of that guidance that they were receiving from their pastor and those individuals that in the past they would trust. They're now moving to YouTube, they're looking to Facebook, they're looking to the internet, and they're very busy. There was a time they could stay at home. There was a time they would be part of a family, but they seem now to be the students that I teach and work with. They seem to be very mobile. They're in a world where they have so many questions about life, and the answers that they used to get from family, the answers they used to get from those individuals in their church, they're now looking for other areas, and they're starting to create worlds that have some kind of emptiness, I would argue.
Yeah, and I think part of the issue is that when there's a compartmentalization, we're just not exactly sure what to draw from. So they cited media as an influence. They cited education or experience. And it's that religion is just what the pastor is talking about it, but that's not the main authority figure. That there's kind of a level playing field. So the YouTube or my pastor equally is informing me on my positions, and certainly religion just losing its powerful punch.
But why some?
Yeah.
Let me ask you, but why some areas of public policy and not all areas of public policy?
It seems to
I
me.
think that-
Go ahead, Ron.
I think that so many of these individuals that we find in our area that actually come to Idaho, they see Idaho as one of the last pristine areas in the world, and they bring with them a nuanced concept of what life should be like. And as they come to our area, they bring an actual clash of what they were raised as, and bring in what they feel that other individuals should follow. And I think that those core kinds of values that we actually have always enjoyed, family, friends, religion, have started to go to worlds that didn't ever exist before in this part of the country, I would argue too.
And I think part of it was interesting in that survey is that abortion, homosexuality, religion has its top influence there. But ironically, as they listed for the election, the top 10 categories of most importance, homosexuality and abortion were at the bottom. I think homosexuality and abortion are very kind of private, personal matters in ways in which they think the immigration, economic policy are broader social contracts, so we need to be listening to voices outside of the pastoral or religious context that we have.
Although that's not always that's not always been the case in American history. In American history, you can look back and see it was very the word from the pulpit or the preached on the under the tent was what you saw in public policy.
Yes, Joan, and that was actually preached with power, and there was something behind that power. If you follow this, you will be blessed. If you don't follow this, you won't be blessed. There will be something in it for you if you adhere to this teaching. If you don't, then possibly it's sin. And individuals who are listening, individuals who are watching, are taking this into their own lives. They're trying to effectively use this, and some people cannot meet that expectation, especially in our world where it is so close, and you find out that some of these individuals that have always been highly respected maybe fall by the wayside. You know, some of these individuals are these, that are these tele-evangelists that
there we go.
have these huge cohort of folks who follow them, and then you find that maybe what they had in their minds and hearts was not exactly what they were portraying. And it's not that we're looking at any kind of fault. It's just that these people are brilliant. These young students that come to this university here at Idaho State, I'm just amazed at how smart they are and how much they have to give to the world. And so I teach a concept of what's called efficacy, the concept of political efficacy. Can you really impact the political system? And the only way you really can is through education, understanding, and also that you know the rules. But there's a second part too that says, if I can impact and I feel I understand the rules, will in fact the government listen to me? And I think that same concept goes with the church or with the concept of the religion. Do I understand the rules? Are they too hard to understand? Is it something that I can do, and will it enhance my life?
And if you're saying that you don't know that the church listens to those, whatever the church may be, listens to the rules, that perhaps that's what usurps, that people then tend to move away because they're not feeling?
Yeah, I think part of the issue is authority.
Yeah.
I think there was a day and age when the pastor said it and I did it. And I think for a whole host of reasons, scandals, some disenfranchisement with churches, that perhaps while we'll listen to the priest and the pastor talk to me about my individual life, there's a sense in which I'm going to discover this for myself and not just say what to do, what the pastor has told me to do. And so you have equal authority figures of the YouTube versus the pastor, or the internet versus the book. And so I'll listen to what you say, Pastor, but I'm going to think about it for myself.
Let's get our first caller.
Yeah.
So let me get to our first caller here.
Okay.
Jeannie in Caldwell. Jeannie.
Yes, hello.
Hi, go ahead.
Hi. Yes, I've seen basically both sides of the fence, and I've seen people that have come from Christian homes and from the secular homes, and I believe that religion and Christianity, regardless of what church you may be going to, does play a very fundamental, how do I say, they have authority. They use like the Bible as their guide. They're under a pastor, or they're under God the Father. And I really, really believe that if our society would get back to the basics, a lot of our things would be corrected: drug abuse and spousal abuse and alcoholism and divorces. Our society would be just like Pleasantville.
Okay. Well, let me throw that out to them.
And so, anyway,
I'm sorry, Jeannie. I'm going to stop you and let me throw that out to my guests. Thank you for calling.
Yeah.
Hi, Jeannie.
Go ahead, Ron.
This is Ron. Jeannie, I think that you have a very excellent point, and I think as we have a chance to understand what you're saying, I was going to ask you, what do you think about the family? Do you think that there was a book written about 4 or 5 years ago called, well, maybe even longer, called "It Takes a Village"? Would you argue then that it takes a family, first of all, that we work together as a family, and we look to the parents for that kind of authority, and then we can move to the village, because the village really shouldn't be responsible specifically for a family. The family should have that responsibility, hopefully teaching, so that when they do go to the larger religion, to this larger base, that they have within them an understanding of what is expected of them, and what you speak to as far as drugs and those kinds of things. Hopefully,
haven't
they
we
learn.
always, in a sense, if you look at American history and its part, that there's always been this idea. In fact, some of those early reformers that tried to push through child labor laws and improving prison conditions, they were using their religion as a way to improve general society.
I think part of the issue is the privatization of faith. And I think when my faith is just about me and whether I go to heaven or not, what's interesting in this survey is those who saw it declining were sad about that. But it's still the reality. And I think part of the issue is my religious faith is not giving me a vision for how to deal with economic problems or immigration or healthcare or whatever. That's not a primary influencer on how I make those decisions. So there's just not a vision, a religious vision that's giving me ideas for how we live in that context.
Let me throw out the idea that, and play the devil's advocate here. Maybe this is a good thing. If you look at how religion has, in some cases, not been beneficial to society at large, maybe it's a good thing that religion's influence. What do you think?
Well, I think the question is what's driving the agenda? What is the vision and what guides it? Is it utilitarianism or a pragmatism? To what degree is guiding how we should treat one another? What drives that category? How do I find value for other humans, like me or not like me? I think there's religious undertones through all of that. Spiritual overtones, certainly. But it's just interesting that there's a disconnect for many. And I think that religion has had places of great influence, positive influence, but negative influence in other places as well. And so I think the question is what's guiding the vision? I think
Joan,
go ahead.
Joan has an excellent point too, where she indicated that in the name of religion, in the name of faith, we should be able to do some of these noble things. But what's wrong with the concept of bearing one another's burdens? What's wrong with the concept of doing unto others? I mean, those are wonderful concepts. Maybe if we didn't have people in the churches, maybe if we could just have the religious concept, we'd all be so much better off. Maybe it's the people that are destroying the religion.
That's an old Charlie Brown Peanuts comic strip where I think it was Linus said, or Charlie Brown said, "I love mankind. It's just the people I can't stand." Can't stand.
The people. That's right. We should use that as a citation.
Here, let me go to Tim in Moses Lake. Tim, go ahead.
Yes. You need to entertain the possibility that our whole concept of Christianity has become so denigrated that it's no longer relevant.
Okay. Well, let's toss that out.
Yeah, I do think as a Christian myself, how my Christianity informs how I would think about the immigration issue. And I do think one of the reductions is that our faith has been surrendered to a privatized, individualized thing. And so I would, in my experience, true Christianity wants to speak into all these issues and inform them in a very powerful way.
I know the Pew survey, it was not just limited to Christianity. This was
Right.
across all organized faiths.
Right.
Right, I was going to
Judaism
make that
and
point.
So the decline of religion was not just in mainline or even
Sure.
evangelical churches. I'm sorry, Ron,
Right.
go ahead.
And what is really interesting, there was a test that was available on,
In
I
fact,
think it's called
The Pew Center religious knowledge
it was
test.
it was wonderful, and I took the test and I got 14 out of 15, so I got 93%.
Good
which
for
is an
you.
A. All my students, I got an A. But what was interesting is it said, how did you do against these other religions? And so, getting back to Tim's thought, which was terrific, a lot of those individuals didn't even know their own religion. I scored higher than most of the people who had that credo in their lives, and I think that Tim makes an excellent point. But I also believe that individuals who hold a specific belief in their lives, that is an actual lifeline for them. That creates that overall pathway that they can travel. They know when they're off the path. They know when they're on the path. If they completely go ahead and wander, as I have a chance to visit with my students, I say, this is the day you were born. We don't know that day that you were going to die. What have you done with that time? What have you given back to the world? What have you gifted them? What are you doing with your life right now that's going to make you spectacular in your own mind, so that you can do something to help yourself, which will in fact then help other people through service. And I that cannot be any kind of a discounted concept. Service is key.
Before you jump into the conversation, I want to tell viewers that you can take that survey, the Pew Center. There's a link on our website. If you go to dialogue@idahoptv.org, you'll find today's program. You'll find a link to that survey. And I too took the test and got 14 out of 15. My associate producer got 15 out of 15. So
impressive.
Good for her.
Yeah, I think part of the issue is that what's driving. So I tell my students who do theology, why do we talk about God? And for many religions, it's primarily to figure out who I am called to be as a human. So in some regard, the very basic questions of why am I here, what am I to do, I think have very significant spiritual overtones. And how we navigate those things, I think, have to have a dramatic effect in how we think about the immigration issue, about the economic policies. And so I think part of the issue is I think we've lost the center of the wide scope in which Christianity or Muslim faith or Jewish faith or whatever, that those things are to be impacting all ways we see humans and how we act in the world.
We received an email.
I was going to ask you, Brent. What you thought about this as we become individually more isolated. I would argue, because we are moving away from things that have been traditional. Do you think that as that these individuals lose a concept of political power because no longer are they part of a labor union or a church or someone else that holds the same beliefs, they become very isolated? Do you think that in that they could also lose that concept of Christ or of God or of whomever they would worship? Do you think that this isolation that they find themselves as they leave, what kind of an impact do you think that has on them, Brent?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think individualism is really tough. I mean, I think people are trying to navigate their existence, and the problem is, if I'm just kind of deciding for myself what's right or wrong, it leads to a dangerous relativism. And I think that we need to come back together in civil dialogue and coming alongside and not arguing or fighting, but really listening to one another. And Ron, I agree. I do think individualism is really a destructive part of our culture. That too often I'm thinking about me first, and so my policy decisions are about my fear or my security, and not often about how can I really find life by caring for others.
We had an email question. Let me jump in with an email question. In light of the suicide of a Rutgers student over the online broadcast of his gay sexual encounter, what role does religion play in this senseless death? If a preacher preaches that gays are wrong, don't they fuel the fire of society to hate a segment of the population? What responsibility does religion have on its effect on society?
Brent, why don't you handle that one?
Well, clearly, in the Pew survey, homosexuality was one of the important issues where churches have an influence. And there are many folks of multiple faiths. Some Christians think it's right. Some Christians think it's wrong.
Same-sex marriage.
Same-sex marriages. And so there's not one unified vision for what is right or wrong homosexuality. Here is the problem. Christ taught that we are called to love. And the problem in Christian context is that whether you think homosexuality is a sin or not, we're still called to love everyone. And in my opinion, the church gets a big F when it's cared for those struggling in homosexuality, especially in those congregations where they feel like homosexuality is a sin. We make it the worst sin, and we alienate and isolate, and I think the church will be held accountable for its failure to really love those who are struggling with homosexuality. And again, some Christians, of course, don't think it is wrong.
Could that?
And that's very interesting.
Could that represent part of the decline? I'm sorry. Could that represent part of the decline that we're seeing people because they may see a kind of a line in the sand over here that they don't agree with as their own personal experiences or what they've seen in the media or what their friends have told them, that if they're going to draw that line, then that limits their authority?
I think in some regards, we are a culture that says, if I can find one thing I don't agree with you on, I'm out. And certainly there are many persons who grow up in Christian traditions, those traditions perhaps which affirm homosexuality as a sin, and there's isolation, alienation, they feel like, and the suicide rates are brutal because we've not come alongside them and encouraged them and loved them.
Do you see it too, Brent and Joan, that as individuals find that possibly the religion is not underwriting their choice, that they move more to a secular authority? They then go to court. They then say, what we're going to do then is sue for our rights. Since we don't have a right specifically in the eyes of God, in the eyes of man we do. So we're going to go to court and we're going to see if we can adjudicate our particular position in this life. And instead of having a spiritual reflection, so to speak, on terms of my choice, right or wrong, it is my choice, right, and I'll prove it to you, I will sue you.
Well,
do you see that kind of thing, Brent?
I also think you have to look across the broad spectrum of religions, because you may find one aspect of Buddhism or Judaism or Christianity that does think you're right in the eyes of God. And so I think you have to be careful about making that too narrow a field.
And I think some people do pick and choose in some manner. I think many students have lots of forms of affinities with Christianity here, or Buddhism here, or Muslim here, on things that are comfortable and convenient for them. And I would say there are many for whom feel rejected and cast out by the church. I think Ron is right. They're going to leave the church and seek approval from other settings, because many folks know that some Christians are hostile on some of those issues.
The same Pew Center also has Idaho on 19th on the list of states where people say religion is very important to them in their lives, with about 58% of Idahoans saying religion is important. That's actually that's kind of right there in the middle of our country.
It is.
Does that surprise you?
It is. No, because Idaho was born in a time and in a place where there was religious fervor. There was a group of individuals moving into the eastern Idaho that had a tremendous homing desire to build a home, to build a place where they could have a religion. And as the state was first organized in 1890, the center of the state, as far as population, was where the mines were, up in Idaho County. In those places, that's where the most people were. And as you see those individuals coming in from China, individuals coming in from other places, that power, as far as the overall representation of the governance, moved from the center to the north, to the east, and now it's to the west. But the religion base has actually stayed fairly, as far as an actual static, I would argue, here too.
And I would say too,
in this state,
Idaho, and still being largely a very rural setting, families are very important. You are tied to local communities. I've spent some time in big cities and lots of people around, but you're very isolated. And so I think in Idaho's sense, in which there's much a family atmosphere, that we're coming together, I think part of religion comes from family tradition. Folks are more rooted here together. I think that it's not surprising that Idaho is higher up than some, probably more of the urban centers of the coast.
Yeah,
or
I
whatever.
agree with that, Brent. I agree with you. That's correct.
Although Montana was a little bit lower on the list, that being the idea that if you've got Yellowstone National Park, or you've got the Grand Tetons, or you've got you've got the Sawtooth, that God is already that close. Why do I need
Sure.
Why do
Yeah.
I need more?
That's right.
Why do I need more? When I've got that view?
Idaho is
God and creation.
Idaho is about 60 to 62% controlled by the federal government. So also Idaho has these same areas, Joan. It has the Selways, it has the Frank Church River of No Return, Yellowstone Park, and so we have a tremendous population right along the Snake River as far as the actual census of our state, and there are a lot of folks who have stayed throughout the years, homesteading. They own their water rights. They're tied to this area. This is their home. They haven't moved far afield. This is where they raise their families. Family is key. Family is strong, and people stay, and the tradition stays, and there's authority here, and there's respect here too. I mean, Idaho is a very special place.
Now we've only got. I want to give you one last chance. If you're one of our phone callers, stay with us. We'll catch you when we flip over to the other side and record our web-only program. You can watch that on our website. So if you're on the phones, stay with us. We'll catch you on the other side. Let me let you get the last word in here. We've got about a minute left to go. Is there anything that people should take away from the idea that the survey presented, that religion is declining in influence?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing.
Is it a pendulum? Is it going to swing back?
I think it is a pendulum, and I think part of it is what function does religion play in our culture and society. That's the real question there. And I think in our history, it's played many different things. There was a time when your pastor, your priest, your rabbi would give you instructions and you would follow. And I think what this is demonstrating is the authority is being waned. I think it's being spread out. And I think with a stronger individualization, I'm going to look, I'll listen to those family members and the priest, but I'm going to kind of still decide for myself. And so I'm going to look on YouTube or my education. And I'm going to look at many other sources to inform those decisions. I think part of the issue is how we think about what it means to be human and what guides that narrative, what describes how I should love or care for others, both in America or in Mexico or Canada or Iraq or Iran. And so I think religion, in my opinion, it would be good to see religion's spreading its influence in that all that we do is a theological category.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If you'd like to learn more about, I'm sorry we've run out of time. I'm so sorry, Ron, but we'll get to more discussion in our Web Extra, and I want to let people know that there's a wonderful PBS series coming up in October. You can see it, God in America, October 11th and 13th. It's an American Experience Frontline special at 9 o'clock on the main channel and several times on HD. Be sure to take a look at it. If you'd like to learn more about this issue, you can also go to our website. You'll find that Web Extra conversation and more facts and links. Go to idahoptv.org, click on Dialogue. You'll find us on Facebook. You'll search for Facebook, Idaho Public Television, Dialogue on Idaho Public Television. Become a fan and look for our shows on YouTube. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on Dialogue.
Presentation of Dialogue on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore family's legacy of building the great state of Idaho. To order a copy of this program from Idaho Public Television, call our toll-free number or visit us on the World Wide Web